Hello everyone. In this talk, I want to discuss how the Jamstack will disrupt the status quo that is traditional commerce. But before I dive in, let's talk a bit about me and why I feel like I can actually talk about this stuff. So my name is Benniks and you can find me on Twitter here or here, depending on how I edit this. And I work at Uniform, where I'm a principal developer advocate. A little bit more about Uniform you'll get to see a bit later in this talk. I'm also working in our community, so I'm a developer expert or media developer expert at Cloudinary. I'm an ambassador at Nuxt, and I also am a technical council member of the Mac Alliance. And with all that combined, I also love making videos. And so if you feel like that this talk is giving you some cool vibes or you like what you see, feel free to actually subscribe. No need, of course. It's just giving myself a little plug here. Anyways, so let's talk about the why. So before I worked at this startup, I worked at agency. So I've had a pretty long career. I'm kind of a dinosaur in our industry, where I worked with lots of big brands that all have e-commerce, and they're all dealing with their digital experience, their campaigns, how to get people to buy, but how to be smart about what products to show people. And let's be honest, they're all struggling because they're all dealing with traditional commerce systems that are very expensive and very kind of monolithical and heavy. And they have these systems because they're the ones that are able to deal with scale. But they're starting to drag them down, and we're seeing a big change in the industry at the moment. And I kind of want to talk about how I helped some of these brands actually get there. But also, now that I don't work at these agencies anymore, what they should do to be more agile and to save a lot of cash, time, and effort to do the good things that e-commercers want to do. And so let's talk about sandwiches. And I know that sounds weird, right? But this is traditional commerce. This is a pre-made burger at a restaurant that a chef chose to make for you. So the chef chose, on this burger, there will be this, and this, and I combine it in that way, and most people will like it. And so that's the same as software for traditional commerce. It's one big bucket with a lot of things in it that together combine everything you need to start selling. But the moment you want to go slightly outside of that and do something else, like you want more cheese or you don't need the meat, you're going to have to go to this chef and tell her or him, hey, can you change this? And they'll be like, nah, not really. I'm planning to do different things later on. And if the burger makes you sick, you can actually point the finger and say, hey, I had a contract with you. I paid you for this burger. So think about how that fits in traditional commerce with these big systems. They're exactly like that. If the chef decides to change what type of meat is on the burger, you kind of have to, if you always buy that one, you're going to have to deal with that, even if you don't want to, or you're going to do something custom. So you might bring some meat from home and put it on. Like it's kind of complicated, right? And so modern commerce is much more like this, where it's completely deconstructed. You choose what you want on your burger. And so that also means you better be a good chef, because not everything goes well together. Not everything scales well enough. And so having all these different systems working together and you choose how to combine them, that's where the new things are coming in. And so let's talk a bit more about that. And so first, here's a little bit of history, right? So we used to have the suite approach, where everything is chained together in one big chunk. And then a couple of years ago, you saw more and more systems that are like, okay, I will keep your big system, but I'm going to extract my front end and maybe my hosting, because I want to put it on AWS or something, because I need more flexibility away from your product to do my own thing. And this is quite challenging, because this is effectively the same thing as going to that restaurant, deconstructing your burger, putting your own stuff on it. And yeah, that's not so easy, but it's doable. We've done this for a long, long time. And so more recently, you see that more and more is going out of that sweet box. And commerce is now also a lot like commerce engines are standalone nowadays. CMSs are becoming standalone. And so where does the Jamstack fit in all this? Well, nowadays, there is no more origin, right? Because when you had the suite, there was one central server that knew everything about all the systems. Nowadays, you have all these different systems. Let's say you have commerce tools or BigCommerce, and then you have Contentful as a CMS, and you have Cloudinary for images, and you have Bluestone for a PIM, and you have Vercel to host. Like there's all these different things, but nothing is in the center telling you what to do. And actually, Jamstack fits really well in that system, right? Because everything is now happening on the CDN. The CDN edge is the magic. And Jamstack is front and center because Jamstack sites are static sites. They're statically generated. All the work happens on build, and then it's just a bunch of static files, like an old school website that you put on the CDN, and you can scale it to infinity, and it doesn't know about a central system anymore because it's distributed everywhere. And so nowadays, everything is API first, right? And there is no architecture blueprint anymore for what is a good commerce, because all businesses nowadays, they know exactly what they need. Do I need a PIM system, or am I fine just putting it in my commerce engine? You know, why not choose different things that are good for you? Maybe you want to invest a lot in a wish listing system and a lot less in your, media outlets, whatever. You choose what you want, right? And so there's no blueprint to select the right things. And because there's no blueprint, because that's a feature of the modern composable architectures, new product categories are starting to emerge. Because as it turns out, it's not so easy to make your own burger and make sure that your whole company loves the choices you made for everything that's in that burger. And is there enough cheese or not enough cheese? And what happens when the cheese is out of stock? What do you do if there's Black Friday and you need a lot of cheese, right? So it's not that easy. And so these new product categories, they're starting to come up with products that help you from a cable management mess, as you can see here, to, where you connect all the different headless systems together and hope and pray that it works, to something like this, right? Because what you want is a cable management system where you look at it and you're able to, plug and play and be sure that you know where every cable is going. And so back in the day, I'm talking 2 years. That's a long time in internet world, right? I worked on this website, and I was in charge of delivering it technically. That doesn't mean I build everything. We actually were able to hire like 20 people, like super talented people, to build this thing on the front end from scratch. And we did a really nice transition from the old to the new. And this thing has been built to perfection. It's properly cable managed. This is a very impressive system. But it took us 6 months to get only one component on the page. 6 months of a lot of people figuring out what is the best way to cable manage this thing so it's good for the future. And so we're really proud of that. And we said that to the client and to the agencies and telling everybody, this is how you do it. But at what cost? If you have 6 months of 20 people working on a simple thing that's something you expect to be simple, right? It's very expensive. And luckily, this brand had the cash to do that. And now they have huge benefits from that. But we need to normalize how this works. It's very important that everybody gets kind of this easy system to make their own burger, right? And so basically, in these new systems, there's no more center of the universe. And all the things, like you can see this moving here in the graph, is like you can have different frameworks for the front end. You can have different headless commerce. You can have different analytics. And you should be able to plug and play. And it should be orchestrated by some form of a platform that doesn't interfere. And so that platform has to be not opinionated. It should not tell you how to connect it or what technical languages you should use. It shouldn't tell you use React or use PHP or do some sort of mix of things. It should definitely not give you a vendor lock-in, right? A platform should not prescribe to the end users, either being technical people or content editors or marketers, what to use, because in a year it will be out of date. And that's just sad, because then you have to re-platform after 2 years for another $1 million. And that's just not necessary if you do it the right way, right? So you should also have no roadmap constraints in a platform like this, because if it has no opinion on how you put everything in place, its roadmap should not influence you too much. There shouldn't be that much of a roadmap. It should just be easier to get to use it. And so it prescribes total freedom for everybody, from developer to marketer. And of course, it needs to have a powerful SDK on the technical side on the front end to actually be able to deal with all that. So what that could look like, for example, is you want to be composing your pages with multiple entries from different systems. Because the problem that we see all the time, and I saw that in my career as well, like almost every day, is you delivered version 1, the MVP of your website, and then the marketer gives you a call and says, hey, can you just make me a landing page where you put 5 products, a bit of content, and personalize it based on the context of the user? And then you as a developer, you're like, nope, I don't have time for that. I'm mid-sprint. Don't talk to me. And so frustration arises from that content editor, but also the developer, because did they build some software that's not flexible enough? And then the content editor is like, yeah, but I wanted to make that page because my campaign goes live next month. And so we kind of need to solve that. And so if you look at this here, you would have different instances of different systems going into making compositions. Right now, you can see I'm switching through like different commerce systems, different CMSs, and then you have your own choice of framework or front end. In this case, you can see that it's Nuxt. You have an instant preview on your live site of what the user is doing, and then you just deploy it to your CDN. And you can actually get a little bit more creative. What if you have global content coming from Contentful about terms and conditions, about legal rules, but there's a whole bunch of campaign-related stuff coming from Prismic? Why not add 2 CMSs here? Or why not add 2 commerce engines? Why not? You might want to use the cart stuff from Commerce Tools because it's super decent. And you might want to do the rest with BigCommerce. Why not? You should have the choice, right? And so that sounds all really quite magical. However, I am happy to tell you that we at Uniform have actually built something like this, and I kind of want to show you. This is the dashboard of Uniform, and in here I'm able to compose pages or compositions that don't have to be pages per se with different headless sources. And you can see my active integrations are currently Commerce Tools and BigCommerce. And so if we go to Canvas, you can actually create compositions. So how about we build a homepage? And so what I want to do in this demo is rebuild the Apple homepage and 2 of its product pages. And I chose Apple because why not? It's a really famous e-commerce and we can play around with it a little. And so what I want to do is have 2 heroes, one for MacBooks, one for iPhones, and then a couple of products below it. So that is content from a CMS and products from BigCommerce. And so because this is a page, let's add a slug. And in this page is now an empty canvas, right? And so we have a content slot in which we can inject some components. I've already pre-configured some components that are pointing to our headless systems. So let's start by adding a tile and select the big variant. And then let's do MacBook Pro. And let's have it linked to MacBook. The interesting bit here is that I selected variant and the URL in here because my MacBook Pro tile inside Contentful doesn't need to know where it links. It's just a standalone piece of content. And so using a system like this, it helps you to kind of separate the layouting data, like it's a big variant or a small one, and the real data which lives in the CMS. And so we have this guy. And how about now we also add a big tile for an iPhone? Let's go Pro. Right? Yeah, we're Pro. And let's go to iPhone. Okay, let's have a look. So I just hit save. Did I fill out everything? I think I did. Let's preview what we just created. Currently, preview is set up to go to my local host. And this header here is fake because this is a demo. So I basically just made the MacBook Pro page, or hero, sorry, and an iPhone 13. And so that was pretty fast. That was pretty easy. And I chose not to show too much code in this talk. However, the components that this is using, they don't know anything about the fact that it comes from Contentful. That is all dealt with in the SDK from Uniform. So when you have a look at the source that comes out of this, it's actually, this is my homepage, you see, with a slug for slash. And inside the content slot, we have an item that is a Contentful entry. And there is an ID to Contentful in here. And the same goes for the next one, which is actually the iPhone that also has an ID. So you see, we're not storing the data here. What we're doing is we're pointing to the system. And in the SDK in the front end, you will query the system with help of our out-of-the-box tools. And then you build whatever you need, because that data is then mapped to your components the way that you want, which means if you're doing it in Jamstack, it's not really a big problem because you can do a couple of calls on build and then generate a site. And so you could, if you wanted to, for each component, do 5 calls, and it's still not really a big deal. Basically, now we created the 2 systems, and they're both from Contentful. So for now, that looks a little bit boring, right? What you could do, like I could show you, like if you wanted to edit it, this would be the flow. So you click on edit, it goes to Contentful. You change it up here, you hit publish, and you go back here. If I wanted to make a new one, you could also do that from here. So the flow is you edit here, you compose. The content editing actually happens in the other system. That's not happening in here. Okay, now how about we add some products? Well, let's make a product list. So this is yet another component, and you can see this is connected to BigCommerce now. And so let's look at some Apple products that I just added. And so what I want is now let's just add some random things from Apple here. Okay, let's accept and let's save, and let's have a look what this just did. So we have our MacBook, we have our iPhone, and there are our 3 products. And so now we have composed a page with a combination of content from a CMS and products from an e-commerce engine. And the front end doesn't really care. It just gets data and renders it. And so if I wanted to change it up, I could, right? I would just do this. And now let's preview that again. And now it's changed, right? So these things aren't super complicated to do as a content editor. The interesting bit here is now that you have this, other things start to become possible. And so let's dive back to the slide so I can explain about these things, and then I'll show you a little demo again. So the one thing we haven't seen is actually personalization. And if you look back in the slides, that grid with all those brands I used to work for, they all without exception needed personalization, because personalization gives you this really nice connection with your user. And to kind of illustrate how personalization should work and then compare it to how it actually is done nowadays, let me show you something from a really cool film. So basically, to create that connection between your user and your website, this is how you kind of do it, right? So basically, you have 2 dudes who haven't seen each other for a while. They greet each other in their own way. And then they share banter and reinforce their relationship. And then they take action and engage. And so most websites don't do that. They just do this. Let's buy now. And so basically, e-commerces that do this the right way, where they have a really nice connection and do this personal connection and make it personalized, they have actually 19% higher conversion rates. 19%. That is a ridiculous number. And so why don't I jump back into the demo where we're just starting and show you how you can really easily personalize everything. So we're back in the browser, and I just realized for the previous demo, I didn't have my hat on, but through movie magic, it's back on. So let's add some personalization, and let's generally do that for the products, because imagine I now go to the iPhone page and I'm pretty interested in iPhones, right? Why, if I go back to the homepage, does it still show me the Apple credit card rather than maybe some really nice stuff about things that work well with the iPhone so you can sell me more, right? Why not do that? So what I've done in our system is we do personalization based on the intent of the user. So you go to a page like the iPhone, we are going to assume that your intent on the Apple website is to browse stuff about iPhones and potentially buy one. And so this is not a personalization talk, so I won't go in it too deep. But what you can do now is here, you can click personalize this. And so this would be the list for if you're doing no personalization at all. And so let's just call this now product personalization. And so what we want to do is actually add another product list specifically for iPhones. So let's find something. And so for the iPhone, we want to show some accessories, right? Let's say, what do we have? Yeah, here AirTag and MagSafe. That fits. Let's accept and then select that this is the phone intent. And so now let's add another product list where we basically just want to say, okay, if you go to the MacBook page, you want to have some accessories for MacBooks, right? And so here we have the USB-C adapter. We have a MagSafe cable, and I think I had more. Did I? Yes. Oh, AirPods Max probably fit your new fancy MacBook, right? So let's add this as well. And then let's make that a laptop. And so let's save. And so what I've done now is there's already a little bit of code in my demo that tracks the user based on what they're doing. All right, let's preview what we've just done. So now it's not personalized because we haven't actually done any action. So this is still the watch, the home, put in the cart. But let's just go to the MacBook page. Right, and this is the MacBook page. So I'm browsing around, I love it, and I go back home. And imagine I'm actually really interested in these MacBooks. Now when I scroll down, suddenly there's like these different accessories, that fit MacBooks, right? But what happens if I'm actually more interested in an iPhone? And let's say I clicked on a link, let's say on Facebook, about the new iPhone. What you could do is actually have a UTM type query parameter for phones. And let's say I click on that. And now this homepage refreshed, but because of this URL, because the user has the intent to look at phones, when I scroll down now, there's actually phone accessories here. And so that were two different ways to kind of build up score against an intent. Like in this case, the URL gave quite a lot of strength against an intent, because we know when you actively click on a link, you want to know something about it, right? And when you just go to a page, the scoring is slightly less strong because you might just be browsing around. So when you go to a page, the score gets stronger. And so based on that score, we know what to show. And we have a little system here for debugging, and you can see that for the phone the score is 75 because I have the URL, and for the laptop is 50 because I just went to the page. And you can kind of see when I click reset scores that it goes back to default. When I can just go to laptop, I go to this. And the interesting bit here is this is all in the Jamstack. It happens on the client, and that's why it's so super fast. When I click, you see here, this is basically just instant. And that's what makes this super interesting, because the personalization is so fast that you don't notice. It doesn't have to go to an origin. So anyways, that's what I wanted to show today. If you're interested in more about how the coding aspect works of all this stuff here, feel free to reach out and I'm happy to show you the code one-on-one. And have a lovely conference. Thank you for watching. Cheers.